what is taught in the Bhakti path is our essential nature, which is that we become joyful and fully purposeful when we are plugged into that idea that I am your servant.
Everything that I do is an offering to that divine entity. Is it normal that people can take advantage of you?
That's a very beautiful journey, and it will be refined over time.
How can they use bhakti to transform that self-critical, judgmental opinion on themselves? What is prayer?
Prayer, I think, is communication with a higher power.
So would you say when people are going through a painful experience, and if you are channeling to that bhakti, you can use that pain as a great tool? Sound has always been central to multiple healing traditions. And kirtan is not merely devotional music. It is a living meditation, a collective invocation that refines emotion, regulates the nervous system, and elevates consciousness through sacred sound. In today's episode, I'm joined by Jahnavi Harrison, a Grammy Award nominee, as we explore the deeper science and spirit of kirtan and understand how it can transform the heart, quiet the mind, and reconnect us to something greater than ourselves. I hope you enjoy this episode, and now let's go over to Jahnavi Harrison. Jahnavi Harrison, thank you for coming to my podcast. It's such an honor to have you.
Thank you. Great honor for me as well.
Well, when I was starting my podcasting hobby, at that time, I was doing a course on how to podcast, and they were telling that you should write down the list of guests that you would want as your bucket list. And one of them was you.
Wow.
And today I'm happy that I can tick that.
Amazing. A full circle moment.
Yes.
And now you've been successfully doing the podcast for quite some years as well.
Well, I don't know what is success, but I can say that a lot of people who wants to learn about Ayurveda, mind-body connection, spirituality.
Yeah.
And I think that message is reached to that right audience.
Yeah.
That's one thing I've seen.
I think high quality output is success because you've got a lot of care in the detail.
Yes.
And in the substance. Yeah.
And first of all, Jahnavi, thank you for coming to Sitaram as well. And, we were discussing this since COVID and now back and forth, and finally you're here in Kerala.
Yeah, it's really amazing. We're so grateful. We've had a fantastic experience. Tomorrow is our last day. And so, yeah, we couldn't be more grateful for our time.
So, Jahnavi, I want to start with your story. I want to deep dive into the concept of bhakti and kirtan. And of course, using voice as a way of healing and also, to connecting to that higher powers.
Yeah.
So let's start with what got you into this first. What you do right now.
Yeah. Well, my parents basically, my father, when he was 16, he grew up in a small village in very rural part of England. And he was spiritually seeking at 16. He dropped out of school and he hitchhiked to London, and he met some monks from the Hare Krishna or ISKCON tradition. And they said, why don't you, they talked to them about the philosophy. He saw them chanting. He saw them chanting in the rain. He was thinking, they look so happy. And it was like a big rock festival, and it was pouring with rain, and there was mud everywhere, and everyone was so miserable because it wasn't a very comfortable experience. But they were performing kirtan outdoors, and he was thinking, there's something special that they're feeling, because either that or, I don't know, maybe they're taking drugs. So he wanted to investigate. And they invited him to come to their temple and stay for a week and just see what it's about. And that temple is called Bhaktivedanta Manor and was given by George Harrison of the Beatles in the 70s as a place where they could have, really establish a place of worship. So he thought, I'll stay for a week. And, it's been 50 plus years that both he and my mother have been associated with that spiritual community. And he lived as a brahmachari, as a monk in the ashram for 10 years. My mom similarly had its, similar story, a little bit different, coming from Canada, but she ended up in England. And so by the time I was born, my siblings, we were raised in that environment, in that community. And so it was really immersive within the community on a daily basis. There's this school on the property as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the main building with the temple. There's a farm, a school, education centers, organic gardens. So we were attending school every day. We would go first to the temple for morning prayers and have breakfast together with everybody. There's probably about 200 people there on a daily basis. So that really becomes your village. And the chanting mantras, kirtan, reading from texts like the Bhagavad Gita, that was sort of just a regular fabric of everyday life from a very young age. And that's a short reason how I ended up doing what I'm doing. Yeah.
Explain to me, what is bhakti for you? I mean, many people have different narration and definition for bhakti. English has a translation called devotion.
Yes.
But explain to me what it means to be in bhakti yoga, or what is bhakti for you?
My understanding of bhakti, and it's true that people translate that word in different ways. I've, over the years associated a lot with many different groups of people from the West who are receiving these traditions and practicing in different ways. And sometimes I've heard people say, it's just love. It's all about love.
Mm-hmm.
And, I hear that and I think, yes, it is love, but it feels a little incomplete. And my understanding, or how I've, what I've received from what I've been taught, is that there's a key part of bhakti which is active. And we say that about regular love too. It's a verb. You have to do something to show your love. So to add to devotion, I would say devotional service.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what, my gurus and teachers have always taught, that it's an active state of being where to the object of your love, so the Supreme, who's known by infinite number of names, you're actively in meditation of how can I serve? How can I serve today? And that may be, in very practical ways. If you have children, you have a family, your service is manifest through the way that you're, serving your family. Or it could be something much more direct, like I'm chanting prayers, I'm going to a place of worship. But it's really, as much as it's an external activity, it's an internal meditation. State of consciousness, really, because the externals might look the same whether someone is devotional or not, if that makes sense.
Yes, so in order to make a layman understand.
Yeah.
So what I understand is, in bhakti, you do the same thing, but when you do that, your intentions are a little more nobler or more connected to an outside force. How would you say that?
So I think bhakti does have to be tethered to the idea that there's a supreme being who is a person.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a relationship that is eternal with that supreme
With that
being.
entity or
that,
supreme
yeah,
entity.
yeah, however you want to say it. But the personal aspect is important, because it's hard to love. It's not that you can't love, more abstract experiences, but in the bhakti path, we direct that love towards the personal manifestation of the divine. And so, yes, you're doing it with the consciousness that this is for you. This is an offering for you. I dedicate this to you. So even if it's like, when you get in your car before you start your day, you have an internal meditation that whatever I do today, the words that I speak, the actions that I do, that I perform, I'm offering them to you. And please empower me. Please allow me to serve you.
I think it was in one of the words of Lord Krishna where he says, whatever you offer to me, it could be water or the leaves of tulsi.
Yeah.
You offer it with your love and devotion to me.
Exactly. Yeah.
So can you explain that? What does that mean? And you're saying that, okay, it can be in your everyday today activities that you do. But sometimes we also do it for our own selfish activities. So,
usually we do.
Yeah, not sometimes,
Yeah,
most of the time.
Almost all the time. Even when we think we're being devotional, there's always a selfish thing, there's selfish motives mixed in, for sure.
So what I understand is Bhakti Yoga is a pathway so you can disconnect from that selfishness. So you have a higher purpose.
Yeah, through the process of bhakti. So sometimes it's, there's different ways of categorizing. A very common categorization is that there's, nine different key activities of bhakti. For example, the first three are hearing, chanting or speaking about that supreme, and thinking things, whether it's maybe, stories that we've heard, something about the characteristics of the divine. But ultimately, all of those things are hopefully purifying the heart of these kind of selfish intentions and bringing us closer to what is taught in the bhakti path is our essential nature, which is that we become joyful and fully purposeful when we are plugged into that idea that I am your servant. And the more that we're disconnected from that idea, the more dissatisfaction we may feel. Maybe not moment to moment, but there will come a point in life where it's sort of like, what is this all about? What is the meaning of my life? So bhakti gives so much meaning, I find, because there's no moment where you can't plug into that that meditation. Even it's challenging, but even in the worst moments, you can say, I offer this to you, whatever I have in this moment. I'm offering myself. Like you said, even a leaf, that idea, when Krishna speaks that in the Bhagavad Gita, it's really, it's not about the thing. It is about the intention that you're giving. Yeah. Which means it's for everyone, because you don't need to be wealthy. You don't need to be very intelligent. Maybe intelligent enough to understand the principle, but, just to offer what you have.
So, there's one side where you can intellectually discuss this and read about this.
Yeah.
I'm sure many of the listeners also must have heard about this, and we all would have read about this.
Yeah.
Now, if we have to translate that in our day-to-day life, what is that hard truth that you know about this bhakti, which you can't find it in the books?
Hard truth.
Like,
give me an example.
Like, there are always going to be, we will be at an intersection that there is going to be a selfish motive somewhere.
For sure.
And then you're always conflicted. Okay, am I doing it for my selfish motive, or am I doing it as a service to the Lord? Now, that is such a hard battle.
It's so hard. It's so hard. You said which is not found in the books, but I think actually in the books, especially certain books, like I grew up hearing the stories from the Srimad Bhagavatam, and there's so many stories in those books of people on that path trying to deal with these real life situations, and the way they respond. We learn from it, but obviously some of these things have happened thousands and thousands of years ago, so it's said in the books. But we learn from each other. We're observing in community when we're together, when we speak together, especially sharing, sometimes our struggles. And it's definitely, it's a winding path. It's not easy. Yeah. Whatever is really worth it takes some effort. Randomly, I just thought it's like the most inappropriate thing while talking about bhakti, but I remember when I was young, there was this commercial on TV for Guinness, the alcohol, and their slogan was good things come to those who wait. So you have to be patient. Patience and enthusiasm are usually spoken of as the two things that you need on the bhakti path.
It's quite interesting you're using the word enthusiasm. And I was reading about the word enthusiasm and how the word etymology is how the word is formed. And I'm always fascinated by how words are formed.
Yeah.
And enthusiasm comes from a Greek word, enthusmos. What it means is to be doing an activity where it feels like you are being possessed by a god.
Wow.
And I think,
very interesting.
I was just thinking that is also something similar to what we call as bhakti.
Yeah. Interesting, because even to have enthusiasm, the the idea with bhakti is that we can't, the common saying is not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Lord, of the divine. So even for me just to speak and think and lift my arms, it needs some divine empowerment. So perhaps even to have that enthusiasm, it's a type of grace.
And usually when you see a person, wow, what makes that person radiating with so much of good energy? And it's that, I remember using that word somewhere, you're plugging into that part where it's like you are serving.
Yeah, the meditation of it. Yeah. I do think that, I'm blessed to have grown up around so many people who were very sincerely pursuing the bhakti path. And over my life, have met a lot of people also around the world in the same way. Even from different religious traditions, this is another thing I like to try to emphasize. And my parents' guru, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, he would say that it's not about a religion. Bhakti is something that can be practiced within the religious tradition that you follow, but it's about establishing relationship to that divine. And that same meditation, I'm offering this to you. So yeah, when you meet someone who's carrying that meditation inwardly, they may not say anything about it, but you feel a special energy from them. I've experienced that for sure.
And when we say we are in the bhakti tradition and we are following that bhakti, like everything that I do is an offering to that divine entity. Is it normal that people can take advantage of you? Because somewhere you're always like, I'm at service. Everywhere you see.
Yeah.
Letting go of your selfish ulterior motives. And you are surrendering yourself for a nobler purpose. But at that time, isn't it normal that people can take advantage of you and then somewhere you get burnt out also in that? Did I put it rightly?
Yes, I think it can happen. And again, I think that's it's the dance of being in a human body and going through this life. We have to learn about physical, mental, emotional limitations and boundaries as well. We can try to serve, and then sometimes it's a burnout. It's too much. I've definitely seen my parents and their generation. They just gave everything, almost like they're on fire, with devotion. But then sometimes they were neglecting their physical health or mental health. So I think it. Ayurveda speaks about balance as a very important concept.
Absolutely.
But it's dynamic. Balance is always, there's always a balancing going on all the time. So I think we need to have good self-awareness also, and good counsel, to know, okay, am I understanding this in a mature way? Is what I'm doing a little too much? And hopefully have some good friends and support in that way. Because it can be hard to know sometimes. Yeah.
And sometimes when you are in that, I am at the service.
Yeah.
And everything that I'm doing at the will.
Yeah.
And like I said, there will be a lot of your inner conflicts and inner demons coming and saying, okay, I also want to indulge. I also want to enjoy this sweet or sugar that is coming. So at that time, no, I'm doing this for the Lord. Sometimes that conflict.
Yeah. Well, then that way, what we normally do is you offer it, then you receive it as prasad and say, thank you. I know that I wanted that more than I was really giving it to you, but it's a gradual process. If we were expecting to be perfect at this moment, we'd just be discouraged and never try, because it's hard. We have so many desires. I think in Bhagavad Gita it says that the desires are like as a river is flowing into the ocean. That's unlimited desires are always incessantly flowing. But hopefully, if the bhakti process is working, then gradually through life, the desires become almost reshaped or redirected. It's not that those desires will just disappear, but they may be redirected as a way of offering. Like, for example, I love music. I love, all different types of mediums of art. But I do find a lot of joy in expressing devotion through art. And of course, I listen to other kinds of music that they don't have anything to do with devotion. But ultimately, my heart tends to come back to that place because it's nourishing for me. So yeah, I'm sure there'll come a time, in my life where maybe I won't watch movies anymore. I don't know. Yeah.
I was just connecting to the word you said. Whenever one of my relative, they live in the Andhra Pradesh, where
Yeah.
Tirupati
Yeah.
temple is.
Yeah.
So they have one of the most delicious prasad, which is the Tirupati laddu. Which
Yes,
is
I've
like
had it.
the jaggery rice.
Yeah.
And whenever they come and bring that, I think there is no Swiss chocolate or anything that can come close to that.
Yeah.
And then they used to say, I have prasad for you. Then, the meaning of the word prasad means happiness. So it's actually happiness. When you eat that, you are like, you're transported to another world. And then on one hand, okay, at least I'm eating a prasad, I'm connecting with God. And then you're also indulging in that sweet.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, prasad has brought many, many people to the Bhakti path. Yes. For sure. And I remember George Harrison said that one of the reasons he kept coming back to the temple in London was the prasad they would give him, especially certain things.
Mhm.
Yeah. He would call ahead and say, "Are you making this today?" It's a special type of kheer he would really like. So, yeah. I mean, even the prasad, when you understand that, okay, I'm accepting this as a blessing or mercy from the divine, then, yeah, aside from, thinking it's so delicious and whatever else, you can have a thought about that divine grace as well. And even if you don't think about that for years, at some point that thought might start to embed itself. And then that also is contributing to your kind of journey on that bhakti pathway.
I think whenever you see a person who's connecting to that entity or that divinity, that's where I think you let go of the outcomes. That's where you are like, when you spoke about Guinness, you're saying that something worthwhile, it's
Comes
okay to wait.
Those who wait.
Yeah.
Yes.
So like the same, in Bhagavad Gita, there's a statement which Krishna tells Arjuna that the only thing that you can claim responsibility for is your effort, but not on the outcome.
Exactly.
So like the Emirates airline, they have a tagline for the business class. Journey is better than the destination. Or the journey is as good as the destination.
I like that. That's definitely a nice connection to bhakti, because I've heard people say, so then what happens, when we're finally in union with the divine, and they say, well, you'll continue to chant, you'll continue to serve, It's not that different. Once you're purifying yourself to that point, you'll continue to do the same things, but just, in complete bliss and without the burden of this material body.
On one hand, that material body gives you a lot of happiness, and sometimes it pulls you down.
Yeah. Whatever it is, it's temporary.
Yeah. Run through us, how do you connect when you sing?
I don't know if I've experienced not being connected when I sing, because I feel like when you sing, you're forced into connection. It's a very intimate, vulnerable thing, making sound in that way. It's different than speaking. And so I find that it brings you into the present moment immediately. You're hearing yourself, but you're also, radiating that sound. And it's literally the life breath that you're offering in that way. So I find it to be one of the most connecting experiences. Yeah, for me. And I know many other people feel that way. Of course, I also have, I've been singing for so many years with other people, and so many people say, I'm so shy. I'm not used to singing. I don't like the sound of my own voice, or I only sing in the shower. So I know that for a lot of people, they don't feel so connected to the experience of singing. Maybe also some people have received some comments when they're younger or sometime in their life, like a teacher will say, "Oh, you don't have a good voice," and they carry that with them for many, many years. So some people need a little bit of encouragement to enter into that experience. But whether it's just expressing, music in a more abstract way, but especially when you're invoking prayer and sharing love through the form of the voice. Yeah, I think there's nothing else that's like that. The human voice.
I mean, when you listen, I've seen it also in your videos and also in certain people when they sing, people suddenly close their eyes.
Yeah.
And then some people, they keep their hand onto their heart, and then it's like they are transformed to another part.
Yeah.
And then they'll be moving with, like they are possessed.
Yeah.
Kind of a feeling, possessed in that love or in a connection that you cannot describe with words.
It's truly amazing, and I'm amazed. It's a bit surreal to have people experience that when you sing, and then you have to really also, for someone who leads people, I think you also have to continue to always be checking in with yourself that this is not me, especially in a devotional context, that I'm in service here and I'm using the ability that I have, but really what people are feeling and connecting with, it's beyond me. It's not something I'm creating. But I know that I know that feeling myself. There's people that when they open their mouth, I just melt. Tears just come to my eyes, and I'm like, this is just amazing. My dad sings wonderfully, or he used to especially, have a real, now he sings a little less, but when he would sing, people would just come flocking for kirtan. So yeah, something very special.
So when people they're like, oh, I don't think singing is good for me. People don't like it. I don't like my own voice when I'm singing.
Yeah.
How can they use bhakti to transform that self-critical, judgmental opinion on themselves?
I think bhakti definitely has an answer for it, although I don't think the answer will immediately land with someone who's adamant that I just hate my voice. I don't want to I don't want to sing. Because ultimately, bhakti is, again, it's not about it's not about a golden vessel. It's about, you can have your two cupped hands, but it's about the intention that you're putting into it. So even if somebody has a voice that's, you could say, out of tune, if they're singing with a lot of devotion, that is conveyed through the voice. And so that's, in that sense, there's not that same quantitative, or is it quantitative or qualitative measurement. However, yeah, we as human beings, naturally we gravitate towards what is beautiful, what is pleasing, and we want things to be pleasing. And if someone feels that my voice, I don't know how to sing, my voice is not tuneful, it can be very intimidating. And that's why I think also the experience of congregational singing is so powerful, because it doesn't matter about the individual voice. We are weaving our voices together in a beautiful tapestry and then offering that. And it's such a transformative, transcendent experience. Can be, not always. It really, again, it's the collective intention that's gathered together that, really, really lifts the offering to become what it can be. But yeah, in that way, if one person is singing out of tune, or if 4 people are singing quietly in a group of 10 people, 30 people, it doesn't really matter. Even if you just open your mouth and make a little sound, you're contributing something into the larger offering. So that's a very core practice of bhakti. And so I think definitely maybe there's still some people who will say, oh, that experience is not for me. But from what I've seen, almost everyone can find a place within that experience of kirtan where they feel, yes, I'm happy to participate. And I feel differently afterwards.
I think whatever we discussed, if I have to summarize, every time you see somebody performing something extraordinary, or somebody who's doing it with full connection and full
absorption,
commitment, either they are aware that they are having the bhakti, or they may not be, but there is still a bhakti. The question is only if they are aware of it or not aware of it. Another way to put it, sometimes when you see somebody cooking, like when I was in my college hostel, so when we were eating food, if the food doesn't taste good, we would say, there is a very old lady who used to cook for us. So my friends and we used to make this comment, I think she's not in a good mood today.
Yeah.
I think she's disconnected.
Right.
So when she's in a good mood, it
You feel
transforms into that
Exactly.
what the food is coming.
Exactly.
And I think that's what this Kung Fu Panda movie is about. What is special? What is that special recipe? It's my connection.
Yeah. Sometimes we think that because we can't see it, it's very difficult to understand. But there are simple ways we can perceive that. I know I can't remember who was telling me, they were talking about their childhood and they were saying, my dad always said that when my mom was angry, we could taste it in the food because it would just be different. Yeah. So when we sing kirtan with people, we invite them to try and infuse what comes out of their mouth with love. It's a bit of a difficult concept to even, well, how do you do that? Or another friend of mine, he always says, sing with your heart. And someone came up to me once and they said, I keep hearing this, sing with your heart. Well, I don't understand. How do you do that? But it's really, try to infuse it with love and the journey to understand what that means and how do you do that. That's a very beautiful journey and it will be refined over time. But especially when you do it together with others, you learn so much just from being together also.
That's where the saying, sing like no one is listening and dance like no one is
watching.
It's easy to say until you are told to dance in front of a huge group.
Yeah, yes.
So coming to prayer, you mentioned the word prayer a lot. What is prayer to you? Is it like asking for a desire? Okay, I want to achieve this, I want to do this. What is prayer?
Prayer, I think, is communication with a higher power. You may or may not have a conception of who or what that is. But if there's an intention to communicate, connect with that energy, divine energy, I think that would be my basic understanding. Because I know I've heard people who say, I've met people who say, prayer was never a part of my life. But then, like my sibling had cancer and they were dying. And I just found myself, I would get into my car and I just started talking to, I don't know who I was talking to, but I was saying, please help, And so in that case, it's like, well, I think that's prayer happening, but there may not be a formal understanding of where is this being directed. I think that inclination is there naturally when the moment arises, it can become manifest. But obviously there's more formal ways of offering prayer through beautiful compositions, poetic compositions, through art, through music. And you mentioned about, is it asking for something? I think the most common type of prayer is that we're asking for something. But in the Bhakti tradition, it's said that the type of prayer we want to aspire for is where we don't ask for anything, but to always be given the opportunity to serve you. Great saints, they'll speak like that. I don't need anything else. Just allow me to be your servant lifetime after lifetime. Even if I don't achieve liberation, freedom from this samsara cycle, I just want to be your servant in every birth that I have. So that's in one sense, it could be a very lofty idea that it could be very hard to relate to. But yeah, that's my understanding of prayer.
So that means it's more like prayer can be a synonym for bhakti.
In a way, yeah. Yeah. I think bhaj, the Sanskrit word to worship.
Like Bhaja Govindam.
It's to offer your praise. Kirti from kirtan as well is to offer praise, glorification, prayer.
And I remember watching one of your short clips on Shankaracharya's Bhaja Govindam.
Oh yeah, that was recently, I think.
Could you describe that? Because that's a very profound start of that Bhaja Govindam.
Yeah. I don't know the whole song.
No, but just the
that refrain. So Sri Shankaracharya says, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Mudhamate. And my understanding is that he's saying just worship Govinda, bhaj, to have bhakti, worship Govinda, worship Govinda, worship Govinda, you fools. And he says that, at the time of your death, the rules of grammar, they won't save you. So please cultivate devotion. My my understanding is that there can be so many details to the way we practice religion and ritual, or whether there's so many things to the external form that may matter as we are in a particular period of life, or we're following a particular tradition. But what it comes down to is, do you have love? Are you able to express sincere love? And if not, you've missed out on something very precious.
I think if we have to...
The most precious, actually.
Translate that rules of grammar.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting...
It's interesting, yeah.
The rules of grammar.
Yeah. I think because, those who would study Sanskrit or the Veda, and Sanskrit is a very complex language with many rules. I've never formally studied Sanskrit myself. But it's very particular, very specific. Even about pronunciation,
Yes.
Sanskrit pronunciation. Of course, there may be times, place, and circumstance in life where it's very important to learn it perfectly, and with that will be grammatical rules and things like that. But ultimately, again, what it boils down to, if you're reciting these, prayers and compositions, stotrams, and there's no love within it, then what is the substance actually? You could get everything right, as he says, the rules of grammar, everything could be perfectly in place. But if the love, the bhakti is not there, then something is really missing the major element. Yeah. The nourishing element. And I've, one name for the Supreme is bhavagrahi, or that he is bhavagrahi, which means he's just looking for that bhava, that devotion, that essence of what we're offering. He doesn't really, he has everything comes from him or her. He doesn't need, our offering of some bananas or something. But if that's offered with love and devotion, then that's the thing that is being received and accepted.
I'm just thinking the word grahi means to absorb. And bhava means that it's like what we spoke about in Kung Fu Panda, that secret recipe, that you put it from your heart. I mean, this is one thing I always train my team in Sitaram. Like every time, when you touch your patient, put your heart and soul there. Right?
Yeah.
Everything else you forget. And sometimes when you feel somebody else's touch, and when that touch is coming from a place of purity and love, you immediately sense that.
Yeah.
And when the touch, it can be a small touch. Somebody could come and hit you hard with love. That won't hurt you.
Yeah.
But somebody can come and just poke you with a lot of anger, and you will feel it immediately.
Definitely. Yeah, I've been really noticing that this week as I've been doing the therapies at Sitaram, because I think there's one point just before the massage begins, and they'll touch here, and move down the body, just putting a small touch. And I was just appreciating how just putting the finger, I was feeling that their intention was so present, and a lot of care and love. And yeah, it's amazing actually how much you can feel through one touch of a finger.
And that's also why we make that special prayer before.
Yes.
It's a way, like I was explaining to the team what the word ritual means. Like we have a lot of rituals.
Yeah.
And I was trying to understand, what does the word ritual actually mean? Where does it come from? So the word ritual means you are letting go of your past and you're becoming something new or surrendering to something new. Like when a common man gets elected to be a minister, he goes and takes the oath, and it's a ritual. Like, from today, I surrender myself to the people.
Yeah.
So right now, I surrender myself to that entity that is beyond me.
Yeah.
So that is what that ritual of that prayer. And that is what another form of bhakti that we are talking about.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
Beginning in that way, because you're surrendering. I like that mirror that's on the property where it says divine healing happens here. You see yourself walk by. You're surrendering yourself to receive that healing. And I was making that prayer this week, as I I was saying to my husband that sometimes you can feel almost guilty being in such a beautiful place and receiving this amazing care and love, because I'm thinking about so many people in my life who really deserve and would really benefit from this, but it may be very difficult for them to come for a variety of reasons. You know, like my sister, she's got 4 young children and she's serving every day. And so I was just feeling like, oh, you know, is this just for me? And is it just, but I was trying to think, actually, I'm receiving love, and that is receiving love and care. That's another aspect of bhakti. If you're thinking about, then how can I receive and then give and use this, you know, to serve in a better way in my life.
You were talking about, the chanting of certain mantras, and you're also talking about Sanskrit. Certain words have to be pronounced certain way. How do you differentiate a bhajan chanting or a kirtan and chanting of a Vedic mantra? Like, do you see a difference, or can we put that in the same group? Like, what is your understanding of that?
My understanding is that, so I think I was just mentioning earlier that there's sort of 2 distinct pathways or traditions. And I'm almost reluctant to use the Sanskrit words because I heard it in a lecture and I don't know if I'm going to get it right. I think it was called Spotavad and Varanavad. And one emphasizes pronunciation as the most important. And when the Vedic mantras are chanted, there's a meter as well that it has to be extremely precise. If you get one up or down wrong, it doesn't have the effect that's said. And then, the other tradition emphasizes the intention. And that doesn't mean that you don't care at all about pronunciation. I think love is in the details. So there's an aspect of learning something faithfully that shows that you respect it and you honor it. But ultimately, if you say it slightly this way or slightly that way, it doesn't matter as long as the intention is pure. So the tradition that I grew up in really emphasizes the intention mostly. And that is, I think there are probably many different, specific lineages of bhakti which will emphasize this. But, the one that I grew up in is really coming from the tradition of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who came, who appeared in West Bengal and 500 years ago or so. And his message to everyone that he encountered was that, you don't need, this was a time when performing rituals was very exclusively just for, Brahmins, and it was, it almost felt like they, the connection to divinity had to be always gone through them, and to learn the mantras, you weren't allowed to have that knowledge unless you were born in a family like that. And so he was teaching everyone, just take the Harinam, just take the name of the divine, live your life as you are, but chant, all the time. And in that way, that connection, that bhakti will become perfect. So in that spirit, many hundreds of years later, the guru of my parents and of many other people came to America in the late 60s. And he was meeting people from all different kinds of backgrounds, but mostly, growing up in America, it's not easy to pronounce everything right and do everything right when you've grown up in a completely different culture. And I don't think he was just making a concession for them, like, okay, you can't do it, but just try and do this. I think really this is the special instruction in this tradition, that really it's about what's in your heart that matters. So you were saying about bhajan and Vedic mantras. So I think they overlap. You'll have worlds where the Vedic chanting is extremely, that is the main focus. Then there might be communities or traditions where they do one, and then they also do, sing bhajans and kirtan songs. And then others will emphasize mostly the bhajan and kirtan and feel that, okay, the Vedic chanting actually, it's just something that it's not really, we don't practice it in that way because it requires so much time and effort also to learn things in a very precise manner.
As you said, love is in the details.
Yeah.
There is a book by a very prominent, the book title of that book is Work is Love Made Visible. Like your work is your love made visible. So like when you say love is in the details, when you put your heart and soul into that, your ability to focus on the attention, it just becomes phenomenal, I think. Because you're constantly not looking for that novelty, and you don't get bored because that connects you to a higher power.
Yeah, I think absorption and depth in what you do is almost it's a pathway to devotion, because to go deep in anything, I feel like people who go deep in whatever it is that they do usually come to some spiritual realization through that, because depth brings us to that place. Yeah, I don't feel like I'm very deep, but I'm trying to have some attention to the details.
That's why they say nothing great was ever done without fun and enthusiasm. And I'm just thinking the word enthusiasm means possessed by God, possessed by a higher power.
Yeah.
Otherwise, nothing great is done, because
Truly.
you can keep looking for novelty and stimulation, and you just get bored very easily.
Yeah. And the greatest depth and growth happens through repetition. So it's true, if you're always looking for something new, it's difficult to find that. And I think that's a nice explanation also of why, when we chant divine names, and when people hear kirtan, if any of the listeners have never participated in kirtan, usually you hear the same thing being repeated again and again. And if it's the first time you encounter it, sometimes people are like, well, why are they singing the same thing again and again? We're used to songs that last 2 to 4 minutes that have like, a verse, chorus, verse,
and a
bridge, and then, But the same thing repeating again and again, you could think, oh, wow, it's pretty boring. But the key is really in opening up to the realm of experience that's outside of that constant novelty seeking, and finding that there's an incredible depth in that repetition. It's not just repetition, it's, going deeper and deeper in, if you bring your intention and your dedication to that practice.
Tell me more about, some people do the beads, keep repeating the mantras. What does it do?
The beads are a tool. The beads in Christianity, people use a rosary. In Islam, they also use the beads. It's a tool that sort of keeps the senses engaged by holding something in your hand. You can move it, feel it. And then it's a way of measuring a certain number of names that you have chanted, which is a way of giving a certain commitment. So sometimes people will measure, this is how many times round I'm going to do in a day as an offering. But it's just a way of keeping the mind connected to the mantra that you are chanting. In that way, it's also it's a tool that supports a personal meditation, a personal communication. Whereas the kirtan, you may be chanting the same mantra, depending what your tradition is. But it's very different because it's communal. There may be music, In some ways, it's a lot easier for the mind to be pacified because it's more interesting being with lots of people. Sometimes when you're doing a meditation on your own, you really have to confront your own mind and your own tendency to be distracted. So usually it's recommended that you do both.
Like I was reading a story. A gentleman asked God, I need a genie so I can realize whatever I want, all the desires. And the God said, okay, I give you a genie. And the genie was given. And then God said, before I leave, let me tell you, there is terms and conditions attached with this genie. And he was telling, if you ever leave this genie unattended, it can eat you up. But as long as you give it clear command,
something to do,
it will come into.
Yeah.
And that genie is your mind.
Yes. Yeah.
And then, so that gentleman was told, so not all the times I need to give some command. What do I do? Okay, maybe tie a post and ask that genie to go up and down. And in another way, it is of chanting that mantras, you're keeping that mind occupied.
Yeah.
And like you say, Bhavagrahi, you're putting that soul there.
Ideally, yeah.
Yes.
Sometimes you can just be doing, and then you have to check yourself and say, okay, I need to bring myself back to some quality here. But it's, I think sometimes I use the example of a vinyl record. We don't really use those so much anymore, but now they're coming back into fashion. But it has these grooves that are carved in it, and when the needle is going on the groove, you can hear that sound vibration. So I sometimes think of, that we're almost carving the grooves through the repetition, carving those grooves into the mind, the vinyl record in the mind, so that it's a little easier for our thoughts to just fall back into that sound vibration. And the reason is it's not just a distraction. It's not just to keep the mind occupied, of course. It's that sound vibration is ultimately meant to purify the heart. That's why we want to stay connected to it. Otherwise, it would just be like a type of brainwashing, not in a good way.
So, Jahnavi, you recently went to the Grammy Award. I'm sure you must have seen a lot of nominee for the Grammy. And tell us about that experience. And one thing that I want to ask, I'm sure whoever got nominated to Grammy, they all had some point of bhakti, some connection. Otherwise, that music will not come just like that. You have to connect to a higher power to do that. And what was your experience there? And sometimes, when you go there, you're also attached to that outcome.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But tell me, what were your emotions there?
Yeah. Well, I got nominated for a Grammy for an album that I made a couple years ago, called Into the Forest. And this album, it incorporates both some traditional poetry and mantras, as well as my original songs in English, which are prayers. So it just been for the last between 5 and 10 years that the Grammy Awards, which is, for listeners who may not know, it's the biggest music awards for sure in America. Sometimes around the world, people don't hear so much about it, but in America, it's a very big deal. And so increasingly, actually since the 80s, there has been some space for music which is meditative, which is maybe spiritual by nature, but specifically chanting and bhakti music. There's really been very limited nominees, coming forward. I think one of the reasons is because, like you were alluding to, the world of bhakti music doesn't have that much to do with winning awards. But
yes.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious how our minds can go there.
Yeah, no, exactly. As soon as someone says, "Oh, you might win an award," immediately you're like, "Am I gonna win? Am I gonna win?" So I found out about the nomination a few months ago, and then going for the awards. It's very interesting because I think, at least for myself, I think again it depends what culture you grow up in. But in the UK, we're quite connected to America. We have so much pop music comes from England also. So growing up, by the time, the Grammys would happen the next morning on BBC News, we would see who got the awards, and same as, the Oscars, all these different awards ceremonies. And it seems very glamorous. And I would just watch that and think, wow, it's a beautiful dresses and all these things. I never in a million years would think that I would be there and be on the red carpet and things like that. But somehow I came to this point. And I think, I really thought a lot about what did it mean for me, and what, all on a certain level, for the ego, it's very gratifying to be told, like, you're a nominee and you're, there's this sort of like this, you feel something. But when I thought more deeply about it, I also really felt that it was an honor to be there to represent the tradition that I've been raised with. and especially to honor Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, because he came to America at the age of 70. He had 2 heart attacks on the journey over on a cargo ship, crossing the Atlantic from Bombay to New York. And one of the first things he did when he came was to go into a park and with a small drum began to chant kirtan. And by that action, by his teachings, by those who followed him, my parents, then I wouldn't know anything about this tradition were it not for that courage and that devotion that he shared. So I don't know what he would say about the Grammy Awards, but I felt that it was something that I could offer, even the nomination, So I think it was really a learning experience. I think in any environment like that, there's for sure a lot of ego. There's so many sincere people, because I think deep down, most creative, artistic people, as you said, they're connecting to something higher, even if they won't name it as something spiritual or religious. There's an empowerment that has to happen for these things to come through. But it's a scene where it's also about self-promotion, everyone being photographed, what clothes are you wearing, selling your brand, basically. So yeah, I'd say it was a bit challenging at times. It was a bit confronting. I wasn't sure at every moment, is this compatible with my values, my spiritual values? But ultimately, a really good experience. And yeah, of course, I was thinking, am I going to win? But I really tried. You spoke about the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says you're entitled to the effort, but not the result.
Outcome.
And I mean, you have to you can only think of that if you're trying to detach, because we would all love to win something. It would be wonderful, even if we're not winning it, like for me, even if you want to offer it to your parents, your community, it would be nice to win. But I think the nomination itself was a great honor. And yeah, a bit of a spiritual education and learning how to be in an environment like that and try to hold on to a core that is true to myself.
Sometimes when people, they don't win something, that'll fuel them, and that can give some insecurity or anger, and think that, okay, next time I'm going to come back hard.
Momentum.
I'm going to come with a new album or things. I don't know if it's Adele, she was saying that there was an interview with her, and she said every time she had a breakup, a new album will come. And then said, okay, when is your next breakup, so we can listen to the next album. So the point is, sometimes pain can also be a big connector to something, creativity coming out.
Definitely. I mean, this album that I was nominated for, a lot of it came up through some painful experiences, through COVID time, through a personal loss of faith that I experienced, and finding my way through that. So for me, that it was a very healing thing to make that offering. I don't know if the next one will be like something completely different. I'm not sure, but
so would you say, when people are going through a painful experience, and if you are channeling to that bhakti, you can use that pain as a great tool?
100%.
Tell me more about that.
I think sometimes it takes some. My dad used to use this analogy a lot. He said, the diamond is formed under pressure. The gold becomes brighter by burning. And the sandalwood, when it's ground, that's what releases the fragrance. So sometimes, till we have some discomfort or some friction in life, it doesn't really give the catalyst for self-betterment, to improve. It's like, you said the breakup, or there's some friction, there's some distress where you think, I need to become better, or I need to refine how I'm giving, what I'm offering, how am I living. And sometimes, it's not every moment of being in pain is like that, of course. Sometimes you're just in it and you really don't, it's just dark. You don't see a light. But at some point, it probably will will start to come, and then there can be some momentum, some catalyst. So I think, at least my personal experience, and pain is universal, but our experience is so personal and unique. But I have found that prayer, and especially music and kirtan, have been the medicine that have brought me through whatever difficult times I've faced in my life. And I think, sometimes I look in the world and I mean, we see so many people suffering so much, especially because of wars and all kinds of things. And I try to, I don't know what that's like to experience that, but I try to think, if everything was taken away, what would I have, what would be left? And it gives me a lot of courage that prayer and that, kirtan, things like that, you literally don't need anything you need the will to do it, but you don't need any tool, you don't need any special object. You don't even need to be with other people. There's an amazing book called Salted Bread, which is by some Krishna devotees who were, I believe they're Armenian, and in former Soviet times they were imprisoned because of their beliefs, and they were in a really terrible situation in prison. And the book is about their survival through that time. And they used to be given this very dense, dark bread every day, and they were vegetarians, so there was other things, but they couldn't eat it. And they would save this bread and take pieces and squish it and roll it and let it dry, and they made actually a mala with beads out of this bread. And then alone in the cell, they were chanting in this way. And it's a very extreme circumstance, but sometimes reading about things like that, that we may never encounter in our life, it shows you that even in the darkest moment, that prayer is still there. There's still something that we can access that can give so much relief.
Like the saying, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional.
Yeah.
Did I say that right?
I think I've heard that.
Yeah.
I didn't used to like that because then when I felt I was suffering, I was like, I don't want someone to tell me then it's my fault that I'm suffering. I think it's true. I think it's hard to say something like that to someone. We can take that in for ourselves, but I don't think I would say that to someone who's in pain, because maybe that circumstance it feels really not optional, and it's really, really painful. And so then maybe, just giving care and compassion would be better. But for oneself, your mindset and where your mind is at. I've experienced that a lot, actually, because I have a bit of a sensitive nature, like if I have a cut or a blister, my awareness will be right there. And maybe we've all experienced times like this where when you're doing something that you really love, you just completely forget about that. But as soon as your attention is allowed to go back to that thing, you feel that pain a lot. So sometimes I've been amazed at what can be tuned out or tuned down when required. Pain, when the mind is protesting, if it's redirected, the mind is redirected. Very hard, though.
It's very hard, especially when somebody is in deep pain and suffering. Suffering is optional.
Yeah.
That time you want to kill that person.
Yeah, and mental illness, depression, so heavy and so painful, and that person may feel, there's literally no way of me lifting myself out of this state. And maybe that type of statement or saying may not help everyone depending on their circumstance.
Jahnavi, would you chant one of your favorite short kirtans for our audience?
Govinda Jaya Jaya Gopala Jaya Jaya Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya, Radha Ramana Hari. Govinda Jaya Jaya, Radha Ramana Hari. Govinda Jaya Jaya. Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya, Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya, Radha Ramana Hari. Govinda Jaya Jaya.
Yes, we got transposed. Thank you so much, Jahnavi.
Thank you for having me.
It was such a heart-to-heart conversation.
Yes, I really
and
appreciate
I really enjoyed how you spoke about Bhakti and also talking about your journey and what it does and how you can use it in daily life, and not just as an artist what you do, but also every activity and every moment and every little chores that we do is an opportunity to surrender to that divinity. I think that's what I take it from this. The best thing about doing a podcast is it's like a university, and
Yeah,
I get
you
to
talk to so many interesting people. Well, thank you for the opportunity to
Yes.
talk about Bhakti.
Yeah.
I don't always speak so much about it in such a direct way, but I really appreciate the chance to, because I'm hearing it myself as well and taking it in. So thank you, and thank you for having us.
I really enjoyed. And Janvi, how was your first Ayurveda experience?
Well, it was transformational, I would say. So it's not my first experience with Ayurveda, but my first time really coming to a center and staying, for more than a few days, and receiving such consistent care from all the therapists, the doctors, the staff. It's really an immersion into a very loving and holistic world. Everything, the human beings that are there, the animals, the trees, the ocean, everything feels like it's it's in symbiotic relationship to uplift all the guests who come to receive healing. I really felt that.
Thank you.